Welcome to another great video. We're talking about retiring abroad.
Yes.
What's going to happen to your RRSP, happen to your TFSA? We're going to dive into that. This all comes from a question from Jake. He wanted to retire in Panama. What happens to your RRSP or TFSA if you're in Panama? We're going to tackle that first. Retiring abroad, a more popular trend.
It is.
We got a little bit of data here. This comes from internationalliving.com and their 2024 rankings of all the beautiful places to retire.
Yeah, so we take a look, and they've used a number of different metrics to figure out, popularity, how much it's nice to be there, what the tax consequences are for everything else, and then they averaged a score out of it. So as we can see from the score, these are the top 15 places they've got. So, Costa Rica is in number 1, Ireland's up there. But as we notice on our question, Panama's sitting at number 4. So it's a nice place to obviously retire, and that's something you can do. But how does that affect everything that you've got when you're dealing with your RSPs, your TFSAs, and your non-registered investment?
Yeah, starting with that RRSP or RRIF. In most cases, you can keep it. You can keep your RRSP, you can keep your RRIF after becoming a non-resident of Canada. You continue to get the tax deferral, meaning that you don't pay any tax year to year. You only pay tax when you withdraw. That continues to be the case.
Yep.
When you withdraw as a non-resident, however, there is a little bit of a difference. The withholding tax, the default withholding is 25%. Often for Canadians, when you do lump sum withdrawals, there's this graduated rate. Maybe it's 10, maybe it's 20, maybe it's 30%, depending on the amount. Not the case. They just have a default for non-residents of 25%. And then it gets complicated because the tax treaties involved. So depending on your destination and where you decided to retire to, that number could be lower. Example, Australia's got a treaty with Canada. They do 15%. That's nice. Withholding tax. US, that's kind of a graduated system. If you take a lump sum, they stick with the 25. If you do more periodic payments, kind of like a monthly payment below a certain threshold, as an example, you could get that 15. So it really does depend.
Yeah.
There are some nuances there. This withholding tax might not be your final tax bill, though.
Very important.
Because you're in a new country, that new country says, hey, you got some income coming in there. We might want a chunk of that.
Yep.
So you could end up paying tax for that new country as well. Often, if there is a treaty, they'll at least acknowledge the tax you've already paid with that upfront withholding. But just keep in mind that might not be your final bill.
Yep.
And there's a little more when it comes to your RRSP agreement.
Yeah. So, again, as we have it here in Canada, if you hit 71, you have to take your RRSP and you have to convert it for a RRIF. Even if you're living abroad, there's no different rules as saying you can hold on to it longer. Those minimum RRIF withdrawals must be applied each and every year. And transferring that RRIF, that's the big part, into a pension plan or a retirement account in another country, almost not possible. They will not allow you to take an RRSP and transfer it to a 401k in the U.S. Most countries will not allow you to do it, so you're going to have to keep the RRSP. But that's a good thing is you can't keep your RRSP or RRIF in Canada and draw it down gradually. That's not going to change. You're going to have that scenario. The TFSA, on the other hand, is a completely different ball of wax.
TFSA is a different story. Before we get to that, before we get too far, Jake had a great question. I imagine other people have questions. How do they get answers?
You go to chatwithclintonandkevin.com. If you're going to live abroad, ask us more questions about this one or other financial situations. Otherwise, we're really happy to get in touch and get back to you on that.
Yeah, and the TFSA, as you mentioned, the RRSP, you still get some tax breaks, right?
Yep.
It's not taxed until you take it out. You're allowed to keep it in Canada, just gradually spend it down if you want to do it that way to ease the burden. TFSA, not so lucky. They are not friendly to TFSAs. Canada says, hey, they're tax-free. Other countries say, no, they're not. We do not recognize them as tax-free, which means if you move to a different country and then you have investments inside of a TFSA, they'll say, hey, you had interest, dividends, capital gains there. All of that is taxable. And they're going to want their money. Yeah, they're going to want some tax money out of it. So for most folks, they cash their TFSAs in while they're still in Canada, because in Canada, you can cash them in tax-free. They do that before moving. Otherwise, all those investments suddenly start creating a tax burden.
Big time.
And it can be more of a nightmare that way. We do have a few more tips, but if you like videos like this, we do have a newsletter, Financial Planning newsletter. You can sign up for that in the link in the description. Beyond the RRSP and TFSA, Kevin, what else folks have to know about?
Well, there's things to know about. CPP and OAS benefits, of course, will drastically be impacted because you're not living in Canada. You're now non-resident, so there are factors that probably reduce what you're going to get out of that sort of scenario. Your eligibility for your provincial health plan, if you're in Manitoba, now you're somewhere else, you may not be eligible for a lot of the scenarios that you had beforehand. And even the investments that you're allowed to hold are scenarios. Certain ETFs or mutual funds or something along those lines may only be applicable if you are a resident of Canada to do it. If you're a non-resident, you may not be able to buy that. So the exact changes will depend heavily on the country that you're with and the tax treaty that Canada has with it. But those are all factors that you really have to consider when you're looking at going abroad.
Yeah, it's really got to be part of a more detailed plan. I'd say, right, most folks always need a financial plan. I think that's the best for our motto. If you're going to be retiring abroad, you need an even more detailed plan. I'd say you got to take an extra step or two. And often you want to talk to a cross-border tax specialist, someone that really knows the laws and the tax consequences for the country you're intending to move to, so you can dot those I's and cross those T's before making that decision. If you like this video, we have one on the screen now talking specifically about CPP. What happens to CPP if you retire abroad?
Yeah, take care.